Hey folks, Janek Gwizdala. It's the Janek Gwizdala podcast. We are back. Took a pause last Monday, no podcast. First time in months, if not even a year or something, that I think I've missed an episode. So that was it was kind of a bummer to have to do that, but at the same time, I had a good reason. I was down in Argentina. We were in the middle of the sessions, and it was just a bridge too far. It was just one extra thing on the workload that just wasn't going to be possible while I was trying to concentrate on making that music. So yeah, really important to hit the pause button on the podcast for a hot minute and get to work on making this music for you. And boy, I mean, I've got so much to report on. It's crazy. It was kind of action-packed from start to finish. And it's so far from over. I mean, that's like one of the biggest parts of it is obviously the tracking, but it blows by so quickly at the end of the day. I think that's what I always forget. And I talked a little bit on the blog, on the mailing list, on the newsletter about how maybe a week is the sweet spot. Like having the luxury of 4 days in the studio was amazing. It's the longest I've ever spent working on my own music. But maybe knowing what I know now about that, especially the difference between cutting a record in a day and an afternoon, which I have absolutely done many times before, and the difference between that and then the 4 days that I've had and everything in between. And now looking forward, I think maybe in the future, a week is maybe the sweet spot, and not in terms of just being I'll bring an orchestra in, or I'll do have like 20 different musicians coming through the studio. I think it's more in terms of I saw a little glimpse behind the scenes of what it's like to really sit with a take, or sit with a song overnight and go back the next day and possibly work on it some more. And obviously that's nothing new in the world of music. I've done that with pop and rock artists before, and spent days and weeks crafting songs and kind of actually rehearsing more than anything, and playing those songs over and over and over again in the studio, just kind of a rehearsal with the red light on, basically constantly recording and coming back and listening and tightening things up and making them better. And it was really more that this album is more about crafting songs than it is just being open-ended and completely improvised from start to finish. So we were layering things. We were playing to stems, to tracks, to sequences. There were just so many different elements to this album that I hadn't employed before in the studio as a band leader. So that was super interesting to be in the middle of, and also directing traffic. No producer this time besides myself, although it ended up being very much a collective experience in terms of direction and suggestions, and nobody was shy, which is amazing. Whether it was like Cliff suggesting a tempo, or saying something about the register of a melody that was being played, or whether it was Juan Pablo saying something like, hey man, you want to watch your tuning there, and just all, no egos, just everyone was open and had the green light to say whatever they wanted. And that's the reason they were all there. That's the reason that all of us were in that room together, was because we work well, and nobody has an ego, and everyone's there for the song, which is a great experience as a band leader. It's nice in some places to be a little bit of a passenger and not so, micromanaging everything and just letting it kind of happen and see who comes up with what. I'd already put in a lot of the hard yards, obviously, with writing and demoing and just conceptually logistics. Just putting the whole thing together had already been a massive chunk of work. So I was already pretty cooked by the time we got there, and then sort of reinvigorated by the show we played. We played a show like the second day we were there, which was great, and the clinic was awesome. There's just so many awesome things about the trip in general, but obviously I'm sure most people want to hear about the album. That's the bigger thing, the bigger project that's happening right now. And I have one thing. So this is yet another moment in the journey as we go from concept to release. First idea, initial thought about, I wonder what I could do here, to the album coming out. Where we're at in the journey right now is me coming home with a crap load of Pro Tools sessions. I don't use Pro Tools. It's not my software of choice. I'm a Logic guy, although I have Pro Tools here. So I've slowly been rebooting the Pro Tools partition of my brain and opening up the sessions, sort of sorting them out to where I can start to work with them and edit them and just get a feel for what's there and listen to some different solo takes and remember how playlists work in Pro Tools, all of that kind of stuff. So even though I've opened, it's Saturday now, I got back on, or should I got back yesterday? So I've been back about 24 hours, not even. And I have opened all the sessions and had a quick listen, but I haven't bounced anything down except one song, and I can play you some clips. I'm so excited to play you a little bit of this stuff today. It's titled Demo 2 for now, but it sort of encompasses how do I put this? I think sort of how different this album is from all of my others, which is nice. I'm always going for something new. I never want to make the same album twice. Everyone being in the same room was great. Always a massive fan of, hey, we kind of have to play this well, because there's piano bleed in the drums and drums bleed in the piano, and there would have been bass bleed into everything had this really old shitty SWR, I think 15-inch combo that Juan Pablo's brother had at his office. It'd been around for a long time, and we were just like, we want something to rehearse. It wasn't like we were going to really seriously mic it up and have a DI and a mic. That wasn't really the plan going into it, but it would have been nice not to have to rely on the headphones to rehearse some of the tunes. So we went by Juan Pablo's brother's office, grabbed it. Moment of truth comes, we get in the studio and we fire it up and the light comes on, because we had no idea if it was even going to work. So we fire up, the light comes on, we're all cheering like, oh yeah, great, it's going to work. And I plug in, nothing, not a peep out of it. And it was making whirring sounds, like it was switched on, but sadly no sound. So it sat there as a bit of a prop. It's probably in some of the videos you're going to see, and it'll be knocking around. But sadly, it didn't work. So I ended up not using an amp on any of it. It's the first time I've done an album, another first for me, first time I've done an album for myself where it's been entirely on headphones. I always have the amp. Whether I want to mic it or not, whether I want that sound of the mic, depends if I'm in my own room, or depends on all those factors I'm sure you're well aware of. Whether I'm miking it or not, I always have the amp in there for feel. So sometimes I have one ear on, one ear off with the headphones. Sometimes I'm using in-ears, but then I'm kind of closer to the amp so I get the feel. And this is the first time I've relied entirely on the headphones. And I got to say, not great headphones, if I'm being honest. They were kind of terrible, actually. But it all worked. And it was the first time I felt like, oh, I know what's going to be coming out of the speakers. I can ballpark it when I get into the control room and listen, because if anyone's ever used headphones, good or bad, and is a bass player and has been in the studio, you'll know that the difference between a pair of studio monitors or basically any other place you're going to listen to the bass sitting in a mix has sort of no relationship to what it sounds like in the headphones as you're recording. So there is definitely you have to have some experience of having played on headphones before, I think, so that you can kind of ballpark it and know, oh, you know what, this is not so bad. Even though it's not maybe your sound of choice in the headphones, you wouldn't want to listen to this raw sound of a bass like that. You can kind of, shoot ahead in your brain and be like, oh, I kind of know where this is going to sit in the mix. And I started to get really comfortable with that on day one, and we were thinking about, oh, should we go grab an amp? Or some people offered, and I was like, you know what, let's just keep it simple, keep it on the headphones. And that's what we did for the whole 4 days, and it worked out great. I'm going to start playing you little snippets of this tune. Now, what I have to say before I do this is that it is completely flat. I haven't even moved a fader. There are no effects, no compression, no mix. It is as raw as it possibly gets. Like no compression, really nothing. Nothing's even panned, I don't think. So this is, I guess, a testament to how well Juan Pablo was recording it in the first place, because it sounds, obviously it's nowhere close to being mixed and mastered. So bear that in mind. But and at the same time, as I have been doing, maybe you'll marvel at the fact that it already starts to sound like something. I don't know what yet. It's obviously it starts to sound like a song, and it starts to sound like the direction I want it to go in. And it's not mixed at all. And you can hear the count-offs and everything. I haven't edited anything. There are probably some mistakes in there. piano is very raw. But the bass is there, feels good. And I like the transition between the finger playing and the palm muting. The palm muting ended up being pretty punchy for me in its completely raw state like this. So I can't even imagine what it's going to be like once there's a little maybe compression in there and some EQ and everything. Not even altering the individual sound so much, but the thing I'm learning about making records and mixing in general is that everything kind of has their zone in the mix, and if something's sort of encroaching on another thing's zone and they're sort of getting muddled, that makes a mix unclear and unfocused. So just hearing the fact that each thing is kind of in its own place already but will become way more focused once Juan Pablo mixes and masters it is incredibly encouraging. And the fact that the piano has no treatment on it whatsoever, we just have this beautiful big room. If you saw any of the videos I posted, you'll see that we were in this huge room and things were goboed. Like we had panels and we switched ideas, miking ideas around here and there, and really were kind of deep into investigating what sound we were after, what we were going for, and then sort of, trying to dial that in as much as possible. It was interesting how it changed over the days. I think I made an effort to, the way I structured the sessions in terms of the song choice of what we were going to record every day was, I think that was one of the keys to the success of how we got through it. I wasn't trying to do a whole day of really difficult music. I was trying to do those things in the morning when we were sort of fresh, but also not first thing when we were just kind of warming up. So it was a delicate balance. My producer hat was on, thinking like, how am I going to get the best performance out of all of the people around me, from even from this Captain Ramiro that was filming and the studio assistant and Juan Pablo and the musicians. Just it's not just about the people in the room playing the music. There are so many other elements to it that you want to really, I think, just bring everyone together and communicate really well. I think that's something I perhaps wasn't great at in the beginning, 25 years ago or so, but it's something I've really paid attention to over the years. And my sort of cautious optimism about the outcome of this project is based upon having put that into practice in the studio and having been really conscious of everyone, making sure everyone ate and making the call to be like, yeah, we could crush out 3 more takes right now, but actually it's at that point where people need to eat and we need to take the time and take the break and go have lunch, and sort of varying that up. And then also being like, hey, shit, it's the last day and we're running low on time, and today we need to be super efficient with the food. And we're going to give ourselves 45 minutes to go out, get the food, bring it back, eat it, and get back in again. So there were times where we had to crack the whip a little bit, but that was the overall balance, given the parameters of 4 days of just all the things that went into it, all the logistics surrounding it. Given all those parameters, I think we really made the most of the time in the studio. And to break up the monotony of my voice, I want to give you a little more of this. So the melody happens twice, and then sort of maybe a little unconventionally, you don't normally, like, the drum solo is traditionally the last thing on a vamp at the end of the tune. I decided to make it the first thing. Like, after the melody, we get into this. There is a vamp. There's also some odd time things here. Even though the bigger picture is all in 4, I'll count it out for you the way I wrote the chart. And 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Now it's 3, 3, 3, 7. Not difficult to know that 3 plus 3 is 6, plus 3 is 9, plus 7 is 16, which makes 16 16/16 notes, I guess, which makes up a bar of 4, of which this is in. So the bigger picture is you could just blast 4 through there, but the way it's phrased, it's 3/3/3/7, and you can hear the specific downbeats of the bar. And that's how I wrote it. By the way, that's also something kind of, as we were in the studio doing it, I'm reading all of it, obviously. I wasn't too proud to take charts for myself and to read my own music, even though I knew it really well. I just wanted that reference and that, thing on the stand, almost maybe a security blanket in terms of like, oh, exactly what is that note at that moment? Maybe you get a brain fart here and there. So I was trying to avoid those, but it was also like a roadmap, and we rehearsed so much, a lot of this material, all of this material we'd never played as a band before. So we were getting to it for the first time in the studio, and we kind of rehearse and run the tape and sort of record the rehearsals and start to put an arrangement together. And quite often it changed, from what I had on the sheet to what we ended up recording. We'd move things around and we'd take things out, add things there, here and there. So it was really nice actually thinking about how I'm going to be able to give you guys that. As I've said a few times before, that's part of the pre-sale. I'm including the sheet music for all the tunes for the album. If you're involved in the pre-sale, which is still going on, it's going to be going on until the day before the album comes out. It's linked in the show notes. It's linked below the video if you're watching on YouTube, and it includes that stuff. And I'm really trying to find a way to include. I don't know whether I scan them in or take really nice photographs and make PDFs out of them, but I'm really trying to include the original sheet music. I collected it all. I was really meticulous. Like the guys were talking about taking it home. I was like, no, I want that. I want all your notes. And, and Cliff was like, well, I didn't actually make too many notes, blah, blah, blah. I was like, well, great. That's a talking point as well. And we'll get to that, how ridiculous Cliff and Tom are as musicians. We'll get to that a bit later in the episode. But there were, tons of times where we had to make notes and cross things out and write things in, and the inevitable mistakes in the copy work on my part, a chord symbol's wrong or a note is wrong in the bass part or something, clashing with the piano. So we would discover that in real time as we were rehearsing. And one of those moments just sort of highlighted in this tune where it's very specifically 3/3/3/7. I'll play it to you again. Oh, this is the second time. Okay, second time with the melody. And it's right in the end of the melody. 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. So we go into this vamp, major to minor, twice. And now this is the first solo of the tune. Just over this ostinato, two bar phrase. Was it 4 bars? 4 bars. And Cliff really goes for it. And it's not like over the top. It's not just blasting. It's so musical, and that's something like I have been in the studio with Cliff a bunch before, and we've played a ton of gigs over the past 20 or so years we've known each other, but this I think was the first time really being in quite, what's a good word for it, maybe it's an intimate situation where you start to depart from that like kind of colleagues thing, and it's more of a serious sort of deep dive into what you do musically, because you're kind of exposing a lot of yourself musically, and you're finding a lot out about the other musicians and their musical personalities when you spend that much time with them, especially working on your own music and telling them like, hey, there's no stupid suggestion here, like I want to hear it all. You're here not just to bash away at the drums or tinkle on the piano. You're here for your world-class musicianship, but really for your personality and what you bring to the bigger picture of the project. So I really think you get into a completely different zone there. And, I'd rented this house, in Palermo, and super cool. I'm going to make some videos, of course, and share them on YouTube. And the whole documentary, you'll see you'll see the whole thing unfold. And that's something also for the pre-sale people. That's another recent addition, is I'm actually going to release the documentary to anyone who gets involved with the pre-sale kind of maybe a week or two before it comes out to the public, just to give you guys, a little look inside, an early sneak peek, an exclusive look. So look for that. We play our first gigs in the first week of November in the UK. 2 nights at the Pizza Express in London, the 6th and the 7th, and 1 night at why am I blanking on the name of the venue in Nottingham? That's really bad. It's a newer venue. Do I really have to go to my own website and check the tour schedule to tell you that is Peggy Skylight? It didn't even get to I clicked the wrong button, but it's called Peggy Skylight. Now I'm actually going to go click the right button and check it. Baked potato, you Pizza Express, Peggy Skylight. That's November 8th. And that's the 3 of us. I'm bringing Cliff over from New York, so it's going to be the 3 of us from the album. Same cats, playing all that new music. Another challenge I'll talk to you about in a minute, once we get done playing some clips from this tune. And kind of to wrap up that thought of how, I was talking about the house, right? And all staying in the same house and spending a significant amount of time around each other. And of course, that was Tom and Cliff's, not only their first time playing together, but their first time meeting. So that was interesting. We had the gig, which was kind of the icebreaker, I guess, like a speed dating event. we all matched, I guess, and we had a little bit of a sound check to go over some tunes. Only attempted to play 1 new tune on the gig. The gig was really more about getting a vibe as a band. So to play on some music, I've played both with Cliff and Tom, but in separate occasions, obviously. To play that music together as a trio was fantastic. I had an old friend, Ramiro Flores, who's from Argentina. We went to Berkeley at the same time and knew each other back then. Hadn't seen each other since. He was responsible in a big way for making that gig happen. So I invited him to play on the last tune, which was great. So it was all really good energy, and the crowd was packed. There were 250 people there. Place was rammed. I think it was sold out. I'm not sure. It was jam packed, and you'll see footage of that. We filmed the show. I had the video guy Ramiro. He was another Ramiro. He was on the case filming the sound check and filming the concert. So kind of excited to release some things from that. Maybe that'll be some YouTube action there, and I'll put some stuff on in the newsletter as well. So yeah, just a really fantastic experience from start to finish. We found out that Juan Pablo is like the absolute guru of the Argentinian parrilla, or parrilla, as they say down there with the double L sounding like a J. Just ridiculous. And we kind of planned ahead to have a celebratory dinner at the end of it all after the last day of tracking. It is a beautiful restaurant. I probably shouldn't say which one it is. I don't know who's listening to this that is down there and is going to blow it up. But anyway, it was a really beautiful restaurant. Could not have planned it better. It's just a really nice way to end. Super intimate, amazing food, super kind of high end place as a celebration, but even as amazing as it was, and I think the only real difference was that in the restaurant they could do things that Juan Pablo just simply doesn't have the facilities to do at home. But his meal the first night we got there, the straight up Argentinian, the Asado, the sausage, was unbelievable. Like one of the best meals I've had in the last 3 or 4 years. Like really that level. So you find things out about someone you've known. I've known him for 25 years and I just found this out about him. So if you can do that after 25 years, it's a great sign. And to me, it was just a great sign that there are so many unexpected layers to a project like this that have nothing to do with music, but that ultimately only add to the entire experience and set you up even more for success, which is great. So yeah, let's talk about the exceptional abilities of Cliff and Tom. La 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 la. Having a fisherman's friend, and it's not being very friendly. I always sneeze. It's like if I chew gum, like the mint makes me sneeze. The fisherman's friend, like anything like that, makes me sneeze. Just one time, right when I put it in. Anyway, yeah. I mean, it's going to be no secret. Once this album comes out, you're going to hear the way these guys played. It was just, I really couldn't have imagined it coming out this well. I knew it was going to be great because I know them so well, and I had super high hopes for the writing. Obviously, I'd written all this music and I was super invested in it, and just way into the process. And they just took it to a whole other level. And not only are they doing that, like technically speaking and emotionally speaking, as they perform the music and interact and improvise and do all these things. But as I was, alluding to before, they're constantly, feeding the fire in terms of ideas and like how can we make it better, and very not dictatorial. It's not a dictatorial situation at all. Really democratic in that sense, and quite. Yeah, no. There was like not one moment of attitude in the whole time we were gone, which is just awesome. And we a couple of times I was like, I think we've screwed the pooch here. Like I've written, the music is just too fucking hard to play live. And then, an hour later we're doing a take of it, and I'm like, actually, you know what? I think we might be playing this in the UK in November because it's going down. I don't want to say it was going down easy, because it wasn't easy at all, but a couple of the pieces that I was like, this could take half a day just to get to the bridge. And like kind of like 45 minutes in, and like we're looking at each other like, shit, I think we've kind of got this already. And the amount of, I think, okay, so every single song we have a complete rhythm section take off from start to finish. Were there some fixes here and there? Absolutely. I gotta say, I think there was only one. I want to say there was. I'm gonna really find out for real when I get into the editing and the playlist. But I think there was only one thing in the entire week that Cliff had to like drop in on, like do a punch. I think it was one. Maybe it was two, but I have the feeling it was one thing at the end of this tune in 9. And I'm talking about he was a fraction too early on 1/16th note. I mean, it was that good. When I was talking about including the sheet music and wanting to, capture the actual charts that I brought to the studio, and Cliff saying, well, actually I learned this one by heart. Like I didn't use the chart on these 3. And I was like, holy shit. Like he went into the practice room and was not fucking around, and he learned the music. Like he arrived at the studio knowing the hardest parts of the hardest tunes, like he'd been playing them for 20 years. I got quite emotional about that. I mean, that's when you look at someone and they do that for you, and you're like, holy shit, that's serious. That's really, it just reminds you why you're doing it and why you're there, and how much confidence that builds in the future, especially in these two musicians, and how much more I want to do this with them and make more records. And maybe they're not trio records in the future, but maybe this trio can be the foundation to slightly larger projects or slightly augmented projects here and there. So that just gave me massive amounts of confidence and faith in the future of making music with this small group of people. So again, just above and beyond the expectations, which was great. And then I'll play you another little clip from this. So Cliff was, I believe we were in the drum solo there. Oh yeah. But Tom has that kind of loose, lilting swing to his playing. I appreciate the fact that it's what I love to listen to in great musicians. Hang on a second. Yeah, babe. Okay, a little visit from the wife. And as I was saying, it's Tom's playing is what I love to listen to. Tom and Cliff. It's just we're talking about time. Sound on this point, probably secondary for just a second. But the time, I love the fact that when you listen to that kind of playing, it's not that it's dense. It contains 16th notes, it contains syncopation, but it's not all just one after the other for the sake of it. It's not that security that security blanket of just hanging on to the 16th note, hanging on to the grid for dear life. Tom is really moving around, and super expressive. Obviously the high moving the harmony around and really developing ideas. And I tell you what, it's a real challenge to transcribe some of that stuff if you want to notate it, because it really does move so much. That's one of the, when you're learning that stuff, when you want to notate it and hold on to that for future reference, like 10, 15, 20 years from the time you transcribe it. There are so many things like that. Saxophone solos, especially. I'm sure a lot of you know that I'm a huge fan of Michael Brecker. So when you listen to that, or Coltrane, or any of those style of players, it's not just locked to the grid where you can just notate it exactly with conventional notation. So the notation of that when you transcribe it is quite an approximation. And hopefully when you listen and you read along with it, you get right back into where it is. And I guess when I'm transcribing for myself like that, it's sort of the notation side of things, and I know we're getting a bit off track here, but the notation side of things for that is more about my kind of shorthand. Do I write a triplet, or do I write it straight and then write a notation under it, like annotate it and say lay back or something? And do I put all the grace notes in and all the kind of ornaments, or do I just transcribe the basics of it? And when I go back, potentially years from the time I transcribe it, to be re-inspired, just kind of let those things fall into place once again. So it's that style of playing, that control. I guess I've heard some people look at it like that it's more out of control because it's not exact and it's not nailing a specific segment of like the rhythmic density spectrum. But it's, to me, that's like when you have the most control, when you're that free and you're that loose. And it's the resolutions as well. It's creating that tension by playing across the bar line and playing a little loose. But where you resolve that, especially as a piano player, it's amazing that you can comp for yourself and create all this amazing tension with the chords in the left hand, play melodically along with that while both hands are moving away from the original harmony. But the resolution is where it all makes the most sense, where you bring the listener back into the story. Something I learned initially a lot from listening to Herbie Hancock, and it's something that all the great players of all time do. Keith Jarrett, I would say, is another amazing example, and something I've listened to more in the style of what you're hearing in this track, actually. More those kind of linear ideas. So between Herbie and Keith, and Chick to a certain extent, but Chick was always a little more on the grid to me, always a little more specific with the articulation. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I'm not saying that like he plays robotically. I think it is very unique what he does, and you can tell within just a couple of notes that it's him. It was great, like a great example of that. We were sitting around in the house one night and talking about musicians and this and that gigs we've done, and we start to talk about recordings. And I pulled the iPhone out and played a track, and it was a track. Cliff was like, "Hey, I've never heard this," but the first two notes of the whole song, and he's like, "Well, that's Wayne Krantz." 2 notes on a recording he'd never heard, never even knew existed, and it was Wayne Krantz on. Oh, maybe I even have it here. I can play it to you. Is it in my? It is in my iTunes. It's "Low Blow" by Victor Bailey. Is this the track? City Living. Oh, that was all he heard. And immediately Cliff was like, that's Wayne Kranz. You know, and of course he knows Wayne. He's played with him, but I don't know, 15, 20 years, a long time, hundreds of gigs and recording sessions and stuff. So he knows Wayne better than most. And immediately he's like, oh, that's Wayne. And Wayne, ironically, he lives down in Argentina as well. He lives in Buenos Aires. His wife is from there. But he wasn't in town while we were hanging out, which was a bummer, because that would have been a good hang. But anyway, yeah, Cliff, that just highlighted to me how universal that thing is. And it's, you guys know, if you follow the podcast, you know that the personnel on the record changed kind of at the last minute, and I was going through, like, who am I going to get? Who's it going to be? What sound am I looking for? I had this whole thing mapped out in my head with Nico before, and I'd written all this music, and I kind of had to scrap that and start again with someone else in mind. And when I finally landed on Cliff, and I was like, oh, I think this is going to be really interesting. We have such a great history together. I love him as a person and as a musician and everything. Let's see what happens. To write with that thought, to have that be your inspiration to write music for someone, that was huge. That really, really helped the process. And then when he delivered like times 100 on the date, was just, it's like childhood dreams coming true, you know, like checking so many boxes there. And it's not like, oh, check the box and that's something I've always wanted to do and great, let's move on, I don't need to do that anymore. But like, oh, check the box, that's something I've always wanted to do, and now I want to do a lot more of it and see how far we can go with it. So just great moments, great memories that have been made. I think great music as well. Very, very proud of the story so far. You've heard a couple of little bites of it, and there'll be more. Make sure you're on the mailing list. That's probably where most of the sharing is going to be, between the mailing list and this podcast. And of course the YouTube channel, something I'll give you a little look into right now is that it's something I did it's something I did for the first time ever. I was very conscious of the fact, even though I hate the fact that it's a consideration these days when you're recording music, I was very conscious of the fact that there needed to be video, and that making an album in 2023 and probably beyond for many years to come, if the camera's not rolling, you're probably leaving a lot of value on the table in terms of what you can get out of the music and the audience it can reach, and the people you can inspire to listen to it and inspire to come to shows and support the project, and, you know, be involved in the pre-sale, buy an album when it comes out, all of those things. Even just, you know, inspiring people to listen on Spotify and help those numbers, those artist numbers, to make more things possible, ultimately more live shows possible. I think if you don't have the camera rolling, you're probably leaving like 20-25% of the value of the music out there, maybe more, maybe much more. So with that in mind, and being very conscious of that, I made the decision to at least try in the 4 days, get all of the songs cut by lunchtime on the fourth day, and leave myself the afternoon to basically shoot music videos and to use the takes we already had as playback, and to play over them with new performances of, you know, just one new drum, bass, and keyboard or piano part, to really have a visual representation of the song and how that looks, and is kind of the energy of being in the studio while we cut it. So not sure how that's all going to come out. I haven't even gotten to the edit stage of that yet. And we did that with 3 songs. We ended up having time to do that with 3 songs, and on 2 of the songs, we did 3 passes, because I only had one camera guy down there this time. So we did 3 passes with 3 different concepts, visual concepts. I think we did a lens change on one, and then we did a completely different look on another. So it kind of will eventually look like there were 3 cameras, which is a good way of cheating on that, and just be a way of having the music, obviously having ultimate control over the music. I guess the way bands like Dirty Loops and all those people do that when they really do a music video. Plus being able to cut in actual moments from the original tracking of each song, because we have amazing coverage from across the whole 4 days. Basically, it's a massive editing job. It's going to be a fucking nightmare to piece all those pieces together, or rather just to catalog all the shots that I want and then edit them. So, but ultimately what it's going to lead up to is the ability to release 3 singles, 3 songs from the record, 3 kind of different 3 really different songs that showcase the range of the album, I think, pretty well, and be able to release those, a couple of weeks apart leading up to the launch of the album. So I'm really quite excited to do that. It's almost like an old school thing, like releasing singles before the album comes out. Steve Smith was doing that with the last project we did with Vital Information. Bands have been doing that for decades. So I'm taking a leaf out of all of their books and going to try it myself. So there'll be 3 hopefully nicely produced and great looking, or more importantly great sounding singles that will come out visually first of all, and audio wise via YouTube. So that'll be soon, as soon as I can get those edited and we get the mix done. Probably start doing that, let's say mid to late September, sort of like 6, and I anticipate the album coming out in the last week of October. That's the goal right now. So I've given myself sort of 2.5 months to do all the video, all the audio, the artwork, like all of those things that go into finishing a record like this. I've given myself about 2.5 months rather than the 3 weeks that I gave myself or something the last time we did it. I definitely learned a lot from that. I don't want to rush the music. I, of course, want to get the music out to you immediately. I'd love to share all of this with you right now, but I know it's going to be a better experience for you and a much more fulfilling presentation for me to make, to really share it in the highest possible quality by taking a little more time than I normally have in the past, and hopefully producing a better product than I ever have in the past, a better finished representation of what it is I'm doing musically right now. So don't forget tour dates. Got a couple of shows in LA. I'm going to be out in China and in Hong Kong in October. And then I'll be with my trio with Cliff, Armand, Tom Corley. 2 nights at the Pizza Express, 6th and 7th of November. And then at Peggy Skylight in Nottingham on the 8th. Also making an appearance on the SBL podcast on their main channel. Shooting that in September, so hopefully that will be out kind of to coincide with the album, maybe as a little bit of press for the album. And also I think they have some other things cooking there in terms of the concept. They've done it with Henrik Linder, they've done it with Rob Malarkey, with Guy Pratt, with Marcus Miller, I believe. Bunch of great bass players, obviously, and looking forward to seeing what they come up with. They have a string change challenge. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that is getting destroyed in terms of the time and the playability of the strings as well. I still give Henrik a hard time for, I think he has the fastest time, but he had like 3 C strings or something. It's totally unplayable and not in tune. So anyone who knows me, the only reason I'm saying that, and it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, because anyone who knows me knows that I have infamously, I guess at this point, changed my strings a lot over the years, like kind of a ridiculous amount. Used to be every night on tour. It used to be 3 days, once every 3 days at least at home. So I only say that I think the string change challenge time is getting smashed, much like the Top Gear star in a reasonably priced car. I don't know if you ever watched that TV show before it became the garbage that it is now, but when it was Jeremy and James May and Richard Hammond, when it was the kind of the original, the longest running, for my money, the best guys on Top Gear, they always had the celebrity lap. So I guess that's kind of what the string change challenge is on the SBL main channel videos that they're doing with bass players, and I look forward to taking the challenge. I'll bring my best wire clippers with me. All right, that's it. Don't forget, pre-sale is still happening. It will happen all the way through this process. I'll keep you updated on the progress, especially on the newsletter. Make sure you're signed up at my Substack. Also linked in the show notes and link below if you're watching on YouTube. And it's great to be back. No more missed podcasts week. No more missed podcast weeks now. And yeah, that's it, folks. Thanks for hanging this long, and I'll see you next time. Bye.